Well, hi, Dr. Dan. It's nice to meet you.
Hello, you too, Karlyn.
Yeah. So do I call you Suneel, Dr. Dan? What would you prefer?
If I look really old to you, call me Dr. Dhand. If I look young, you can call me Suneel. How's that?
Excellent. So we'll go with Suneel and Karlyn
I
for
like
this.
it. I like it.
So I heard you got kicked off of LinkedIn of all places.
I did, yes. So I'd been posting for some time and having some issues over the summer with a few of my posts, where I was actually putting factual information and links to certain stories when they were getting blocked and censored. I complained, and then I tried to log in. This is back in September, and found out my account had actually been restricted. They wouldn't actually let me in. They'd banned me from their site.
That is insane. I don't know that I know anyone else that actually got kicked off of LinkedIn. Did they give you a reason for it? Did they give any explanation?
Yeah, for posting misinformation.
Because LinkedIn should be the arbiters of medical misinformation now, right?
Exactly. Yeah. What can you say? That's the unfortunate time that we're living in right now,
Yeah. Well,
which is
I
why
do.
a lot of us have come to locals.
Oh no, that's totally true. Like locals is, it's like this place where we don't have to worry about what we're gonna say or being censored or turned off or anything. And I mean, this is like a hot button for you because you talk about COVID like a lot,
I
right?
do. Yes. One of my major topics. Wish I didn't have to, but yeah, it's never ending.
I'm actually really impressed that you even still have a YouTube channel. I don't want to jinx anything, like knock on wood, but I'm really impressed because I feel like every time I talk about COVID on YouTube, I get a strike for anything. So I just don't even talk about
Wow.
it anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I guess I could be taken off at any time. Yeah. Even though I'm talking about facts and real
Mhm.
information.
Now, are you able to talk? Do you talk about COVID in different ways in your locals community than you do on YouTube?
So I'm more willing to talk about more controversial issues on locals and be more open, especially with my community, on what my thoughts are on certain issues. But again, I like to think it's always backed up by science. But unfortunately, big tech are now the arbiters of what is science. I feel like we're going back to a dark age in many ways. And I'm sure we will come out of it, but I'd like to be remembered as somebody that stood against it and didn't go with the craziness that unfortunately the majority of group thinkers are going with right now.
Was the COVID censorship, was that kind of your first encounter with tech censorship?
Good question. I would say on a personal level, yes, because I mean, I have my own political views, but I'm never that big with them online, as most of us do. We all harbor our own views, but I'd heard about how if you cross the line or you say certain things, you run the risk of big tech censorship. And I never really took it that seriously until it started happening to me. Ironically, in my own field of medicine and science, which makes me more internally wound up about the whole situation, but also more determined to fight it because what they're doing is wrong. They are the bad guys, and history is not going to judge them well at all.
Mm-hmm. No, I feel like I had a little bit of the same realization because I was a Democrat, a lefty for 20 years. And then as soon as I left the Democratic Party, all of a sudden my social media started getting censored in a way that it hadn't been before. And I kind of wonder as a doctor because I mean, political views are one thing, those are opinions, but you are a medical doctor. How did it feel for you when your medical opinion, based on what I'm sure is many years of experience and practical application, they started censoring your medical opinion? How did that feel?
I mean, of course. I mean, it felt terrible, and it's happened so much now that I have grown used to it, and I kind of view it as the fight of our times now. I mean, there's no point. I mean, one of the things I'm big on, and this links into wellness, is a whole philosophy of life and stoicism as well. And you can't change the ways of the world. Craziness among humans has been going on since we were cavemen. And this is just one manifestation of it, of the times that we are living in. And you can either get worked up, you can feel down, you can think this is ridiculous, or you can stand firm and fight back in whatever way you can. So that's what I strive to do. But of course, it is disappointing because I'm quite confident everything I say is not just backed up by science, Karlyn, but also I have been practicing at the front lines. I've treated hundreds of COVID patients over the last week mean, this is only my second day off, but I worked almost 2 weeks in a row. Dozens of COVID patients I was seeing and treating. And yeah, this is where we are, that when I say certain things and speak certain truths, that's now censored. And what makes this more insulting is that this is happening in America.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, we're not speaking in Russia or some basket case country with a dictatorship. This is actually America where this is happening. And only a few of us are scratching our heads. You seem like you have the same viewpoint, that what is going on here and why are we even talking like this?
Well, it's like it feels like we're living in like the precursor to 1984 in so many respects, and it's like the state and the tech companies, which are, frankly, let's be honest, like the tech CEOs are more powerful than the state at this point. They don't need to listen to the government at all. They're basically saying, like, you will follow our rules. If we do not want you to say something, you are not allowed to say it in the public square. And I think for me, especially going through 2020, and the internet was the public square in 2020. You could not participate in civil discourse unless the tech CEOs allowed it. And to me, regardless of what you think about COVID or vaccines or politicians or anything else, that to me is just fundamentally un-American.
Absolutely, couldn't agree with you more. What were the topics, Karlyn, that you were talking about where you were getting censored for COVID?
Oh, so I read an article, I believe it was from the New England Journal of Medicine, but I could be wrong about that, but it was about the psychological impact of mask wearing. And this for me has been one of my major issues. I'm a psychologist in real life, and I've
Wow.
always thought that, the impact of wearing a mask over the thing you use to express yourself was going to have a dramatic impact on self-esteem and self-worth. And so this is an issue that I've been screaming about from the very beginning of mask mandates, that this was going to have mental health crises for this society that were going to follow us long beyond the pandemic. And they gave me a strike for that, for reading a peer-reviewed medical article from a respectable medical journal talking about the psychological impacts of mask wearing. I also had an interview on my channel with someone whose grandfather died a day after getting one of the vaccines, perfectly healthy before then, for like an older gentleman, but basically, like, had a heart attack, died out of nowhere a day after getting the vaccine. And I wasn't even really necessarily saying one caused the other, but it was a cause for concern. So that got censored.
Of course,
too.
if something happens a day after, that's fairly obvious. Yeah.
One would think, but
yeah.
but it's sad to me that we're not even allowed to share these very basic opinions, or even talk about very basic human experiences. And it almost feels like they're trying to make us all assimilate to the Borg, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. And I'm absolutely shocked. So you had an interview with someone who was giving a real life perspective, and it got banned. It got taken down.
Yeah. And the thing of it is, we knew, like, I went into it with eyes wide open. We knew that if we platformed this, that it was probably going to get taken down. And sure enough, within about a day, YouTube took it down entirely.
And their reason was that
it was medical and misinformation.
Wow, that's shocking. And this comes back to bite the medical community, because I have seen other videos up where people give their perspective and they stay up. It seems random in a way who they target. So do you still have a YouTube channel, or have you got completely canned?
No, I do, but I'm in some like 9th level of YouTube quarantine where they don't even serve my videos to anyone that's not a subscriber at this point.
Wow. Yeah.
Which is,
but it's that's the power they have, unfortunately, right now. And again, history will not judge them well. When we will eventually come out there. I mean, so many things like the lab leak, which at first you couldn't even say it without it being taken down. Now it seems to be very plausible, and I can tell you probably the majority of the medical community believes that's how this started.
Well, and that's one of the things is, and all these things coming out. I think of what was her name? Dr. Stella Emanuel on the steps of the Capitol, talking about how she was treating COVID, and people may or may not agree with her protocol, but it came out that she was pretty correct in some of the things that she was saying later. Anyone who shared that video on Facebook or anywhere got banned.
Wow.
I mean, it's just, and they ruined this woman's reputation, and they, damaged her character. And that to me is just one of, they use people as pawns in their political game. And they
They
use people's
do.
health as pawns in their political game, and that actually offends me even more.
I love that you said that. I agree. I think that corruption will always be there. I think that we've made progress in that we are more open and transparent. Like if you want to know what somebody's conflicts of interests are and who's paying them, it's more easier to find that out today than 100 years ago. And you can take corruption to, okay, well, you know, they're expanding fast food restaurants, or they want to get people to do this or have this hobby instead. But when we're talking about corruption actually interfering with health and putting medical therapeutics on people in a certain way purely because of corruption as opposed to real science, I think that takes things to an absolutely stunningly dangerous point. And the problem is that in the United States, at least, we have a media which is fairly out of control and also very much in the pockets of big corporations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'll tell you something really interesting I heard the other day. It was someone who grew up in the Soviet Union. And they said to me, they'd been in the US for about 10 years. And they said a really big difference between the Soviet Union, this is, you know, dark times, 70s, 80s, when he grew up, and the US. He said, when I was growing up, we used to watch state-sponsored media, and everybody at home just used to laugh at it and say, what on earth are they talking about? This is rubbish. This is nonsense. And he said the difference is in the US, I'm here, and people actually believe what they're hearing and don't question it. And he said he found that even more scary than the Soviet Union. Stunning.
You know, that
Yeah.
doesn't actually surprise me at all, because my husband's actually from Ukraine, and he says
Okay.
the same thing all
Yeah.
the time. He's like, this is you know, this is BS, Karlyn. You understand that? Like, he says
Yeah.
exactly the same things. So what are some of the things that you're able to do in locals that you can't do on your other platforms?
So I can be much more open and honest. So I try to reply to all of the comments I get. I find that people as well are much more willing to share personal stories. So I've been very honored to share in their experiences. They direct message me. I'll post the same thing in YouTube and locals, but I'll put a different heading on it or a different comment myself, encouraging people to comment a certain way. But I'm more free to do that. And again, I'm not doing anything that I consider is off the wall. Everything I say and do is backed up by science, but I feel much more muzzled on other big tech platforms like YouTube.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I much prefer interacting in locals, because it's like the people who are in locals, they've opted in to be there. They want to be a part of the community. And I also feel
Exactly.
like it's a place where you can have more authentic back and forth conversation and really get to know and help people.
That's right. That's right. So what is the main focus of your channel then?
Yeah, so the main focus of my locals community is I wanted to create a place for people to be able to express themselves, because I do feel like expression is something that is, again, directly related to our self-esteem and our self-worth. And so I wanted to have a place where people could come in, say what they wanted to say without being censored, without being judged. Not necessarily that everyone's going to agree with them on everything, but you know, we do Zoom calls in my locals, we do book clubs. I create a lot of opportunities for people to actually talk to each other in person, in you know, in our own little safe space. And I think that just the virtue of having a place where they know that they aren't going to be kicked out of the community for saying something controversial, they are going to be kicked out for asking a question or anything like that, it allows people to open up. And it's so
very true.
It's so great, because sometimes you get to see people who, you know, maybe they were even nervous just to have a Twitter account with their picture on it, and all of a sudden they're starting YouTube channels and they're doing all this stuff, and it's just like, it's a wonderful thing to watch, right?
Yep, that is right. Yeah. And I was very excited when I heard about locals, because I've been having issues with YouTube. I've already got a couple of strikes against me. So as you say, I never know when I'm going to come off YouTube. So I was trying to tell people on YouTube what was happening and then get people over to locals. But I happened to find locals.com when I was doing my own research of what would be another good platform to join, which is more closed. Obviously, especially if I'm doing subscriber only posts, I know that people are only there because they really want to be there. They're not going to be trolls. They're not going to be there for any nefarious reasons, or unlikely to be anyway. And yeah, I found out about David Rubin, and I think he co-founded it with Jordan Peterson. Is that correct?
I'm not
who,
sure if it was with Jordan, but yeah, Dave is
yeah.
definitely the impetus behind it.
Okay. Yeah, I thought
Yeah.
Jordan Peterson may have had something to do with it. But yeah, I mean, what a great concept. And I know it's growing rapidly. And this is my big hope, Karlyn, that big tech is going to pay a price. We're going to see in the next few years some other massive platforms come in, and they're going to lose money, which is what this is all about. If half the country move away from them, they will quickly realize that they've made a mistake.
Yeah. When I first got on Locals, I wasn't entirely convinced with Dave's vision, to be honest, about, these smaller, more focused communities being the way to go moving forward. But since then, it is absolutely proven to be correct. I really think it's the only way that we can move forward, is to find communities of like-minded individuals and to be able to connect with those people on, hopefully a personal level if we're doing it right. Because it's, the rest of the internet is just too insane at this point. I feel like everywhere I
Yeah.
go, people are addicted to outrage, and I think that if we can at least have one refuge in the sea of craziness, then that's going to be good for everyone.
Agree completely.
Yeah. So I noticed on your channel, you do content around wellness, just general wellness and well-being too, right?
Yes, correct. That's originally how I started. That's my big interest. I'm trained in internal medicine, but I have a huge passion for lifestyle medicine. And this intrinsically relates to where we are with COVID-19 as well. But yeah, that was my original focus on how we can go about having a better health baseline. And it's unfortunately got worse since COVID started. All the issues that I want to talk about: nutrition, exercise, sleep, stress, all of which have escalated to further deep trenches, unfortunately, over the last 18 months. But that's my primary focus, and wherever I can, I link that to COVID-19.
Mm-hmm. What are some things that people should consider when dealing with stress in general? Just some general tips that people might be able to utilize.
Yeah, so I would say, firstly, the number one thing to do is to identify very clearly what your sources of stress are in life. We all have stresses. And the problem with stress is that it builds up very quickly over time. And lots of people at certain stages of life don't realize how much it's building up. So stress serves a function at a fundamental level. It's a fight or flight response. It's our basic evolutionary mechanism to deal with something which could kill us. So it's there for a purpose, but it's not designed for these constant low-level stresses that we have every day in our jobs, with our family. Cortisol, adrenaline levels shoot up. And if these are sustained over time, the amount of detrimental health effects are absolutely enormous, from obviously depression, but other pathological, other bodily systems affected: heart disease, gastrointestinal illnesses, autoimmune disease, even infection risk goes up. And you ask most doctors out there, we can't tell you the number of times we see in the hospital somebody gets sick, and we'll go through their history and they will say, yes, I've been really stressed recently, haven't been myself, and boom, I get this illness. So it is crucial that we identify the stresses in our lives and we work on ways to overcome that stress, and be realistic as well. You're never going to have a completely stress-free life, but what can improve your everyday stress management? I'm not a big fan of the term coping or resilience. I don't think they're good terms at all. Management is a far better word. Healthy lifestyle is the number one fundamental basic of managing your stress. If you have that foundation, you will do well. If you're sleeping 7 to 8 hours every night, if you're eating healthy and exercising every single day, that will stand you in good stead. And then during the day, how do you take on the stress? How do you separate what's in your control from what's not in your control? How do you identify that exact moment the stress hits, responding slightly differently, utilizing breathing techniques, taking breaks during the day? I could talk for hours on this issue, but it's a whole sequence of things that one has to do. But the first step is to, if you're at an unhappy stage in your life and you know that stress is overwhelming, identify clearly what that stress is, and then start formulating everyday management plans to combat it.
No, I completely agree. And we'll definitely have to continue this conversation maybe in my community, because in my community, I'm going to be doing much more content around just mental health and like well-being and mindfulness and like, you know, stuff like that. Because I really think that the amount of outrage addiction, I keep trying to explain this to people, you can get
Yeah.
addicted to emotions.
Oh,
And
yes, yeah.
and people are so addicted to being angry right now that they're constantly looking for ways to feed that anger, and it could be almost any other thing. And it's like, that's going to make you physically sick. And it's not always, correct me if I'm wrong, because again, I'm a psychologist, I'm not a medical, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a real doctor. But like, if people are getting physically sick from stress, we can't
Yeah.
predict how they're going to get physically sick, right? We just know that the rubber's going to meet the road at some point.
Exactly. And that's why I like to focus on the emotional side of wellness as well. And as I said, I'm very into stoicism, which I think is a great stress management tool. But what we have to realize is that modern day culture, especially social media culture, really feeds into that kind of outrage. And it's a very basic human emotion as well. You know, we're tribal by nature. That's just a fact. And I use the example of even supposing you take the United States, if it broke off in two and you had a Democrat half and a Republican half, people might think, well, that's great. But it wouldn't take long before those different halves started splitting off again, because you're a psychologist, you know this, we have to be tribal. That's who we are. I mean, look at the way chimpanzees behave in the wild, and they're our closest relative. So recognizing that there will always be an other, and understanding that you shouldn't feel outraged. The goal should be not to necessarily cede your beliefs, but to understand that there will always be people who think differently, and you just stand your ground, stand firm, be true to yourself, but accept that not everybody is going to agree with you.
Yeah, I think it has to do with looking for validation inside yourself rather than
Yeah,
looking from external sources at the end of the
good
day,
way to
right?
put it. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. But yeah, I'd be happy to talk more with your communities as well, because this is such a big topic, and it's a shame because we have our lives more comfortable today than ever before, especially in America. I mean, our ancestors would kill to be in our positions, but yet we're not emotionally happier. And I was even having a thought this morning with all of the younger generation, the millennials, and what do they call the generation before that, the newer one?
The Zoomers.
Yeah, that generation, for all that they have and how enlightened they think they are. I'm not going to use the word woke, I won't get political, but how enlightened they think they are. I really think you could ask any of them, are you happier than your parents? I don't think they are. I think their parents. So what is this all for if your mental wellness doesn't come with it?
Mm-hmm. No, and actually the research does back that up, is that this generation is less happy than their parents were. And I agree, it's such a shame. They have so much to be grateful for. There's so many amazing things going on in the world, so many amazing things they could do. And I wish people, a very simple practice that anyone can do is just have like a gratitude practice. Like at the beginning of
Oh yeah,
beginning
true.
of every day, end of every day, what went well today? What am I thankful for? So maybe that's a good way to wrap this up, though. So maybe that's the perfect tone to end on. Is there anything that gives you hope with what's going on in our world right now? What's your white pill?
Yes, so I would say two things give me hope. One is that if you study history, the truth always comes out in the end. Like,
Mm-hmm.
humans find a way out of madness. And secondly, this is my firm belief, there are more good people in the world than bad people
Mm-hmm.
who don't want corruption, who don't want the world to head in the wrong direction, who want the best for themselves and their families and want to live an honest life. I think the good people outweigh the bad, so that will always take the curve towards better times. That's my sentence of optimism.
I hope you're right. Some days I really question that. I do. But I do think at their nature people are good. I think sometimes they get the wool pulled over their eyes by nefarious actors for a little while. But I do hope, I've seen more people start to red pill in the past couple months, from everything from like Kyle Rittenhouse to the next round of booster shots to the increased censorship. I've seen a
Oh
lot more
yes,
people starting to wake up. And so
I've seen the same. Yeah,
those people do give me hope that it is possible.
let's push forward. Fingers crossed, Karlyn.
Fingers crossed. Well, what is your locals URL that people can go to if they want to join your community?
So it's my name, Dr. Suneel Dhand.
Awesome. And I'm at KB.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Yours is, yeah.
Yeah, kb.locals.com.
kt.locals.com. Easy
KB,
to remember.
just
KP. Okay. KB.
KB, yeah, because I
Got
like
you.
my name, my first and last name are both impossible, and so I just tried to make it as simple as I could. Well, Suneel, it's such a pleasure to talk to you, and I can't wait to. I'm gonna go and join your locals now, and definitely will have you in my locals in the future if you'd like to come and talk to us about well-being and stress management and stuff like that.
You too. Likewise. Been a pleasure.
Awesome.
Take care.
Take care.